Yo, what's up guys? My name's Joel from Easy Engineering and welcome back to another video. So today I wanted to dive a little deeper into the technique of downwards compression, which is the most common form of compression out there. We use it all the time. We might actually be using it a little bit too much if I'm honest, but I just wanted to dive in, give a little rundown into how to use it correctly, when to apply it correctly, and just some effects that it can have on the overall mix. Now be sure to stay until the end of the video because I will be giving a brief insight into the technique of mid-side compression, and it's a great tool for the mastering stage. So with that being said, let's get right into the video.
Okay, cool. So now that we're in Ableton, I have a few examples laid out here where you'd want to be using downwards compression, and the first example is with percussive elements, because a lot of percussion, it tends to have a lot of inconsistencies, so the dynamic range varies quite a lot, and that's not really an issue, but when you want to kind of fit it and glue it in with the entire mix, you want to just try and squash or just tame that dynamic range a little bit more, just so those percussive elements are hitting at a more consistent rate with each other, and it just feels a lot more glued. So if you can hear here, there's a lot of kind of side information, and they're sitting more forward compared to the kind of mid information. If you can hear the impacts or the percussive kind of snare hits are quite subtle compared to the hi-hats, and the hi-hats are also quite, yeah, there's just a lot of inconsistency. So what I'd do is I'd go in and I'd open up my Fab Filter Pro C and just kind of tinker around with the ratio and the attack time. Now the attack time, because obviously percussive has quite a lot of transients, and this is the whole idea behind downwards compression, is that you're kind of taming the transients of a sound, but with percussion we want to try and keep the initial hit of that transient. We want to try and keep that peak, just to kind of keep the presence or the brightness of these elements cutting through the mix. So you'd have a medium to long attack, maybe not too long, maybe a medium attack, just to preserve that first initial transient, and you'd have around a medium ratio, just around 4 or 5, depending on what sounds better. And also because there's a lot of elements over here, there's not just one. Like if it was a single snare or a single hi-hat, you would have a really fast release, because it's quite a quick sound, but because there's quite a lot of elements in this loop, we'll give it a little bit more of a release, nothing too crazy. Yeah, just a medium release around 85 milliseconds, and I think I'd give the threshold around maybe 12, -14, and as you can see, kind of brings the side information, hi-hats a little bit, kind of squashes them down a little bit, just brings them more and glues them with the rest of the elements within this loop. And also those snare hits kind of come forward a little bit more. So if I bypass it, I might give a stronger ratio, maybe 6. So yeah, that's kind of the one example of gluing these inconsistent dynamic ranges together. You can do this on just kicks, if your kick is quite inconsistent, and any kind of element that has inconsistencies with dynamics, and you want to try and control these dynamic ranges, make them sound a little bit more consistent. Now with vocals, it can be a little bit of a different story, but again, you want to try and control those inconsistencies, because obviously when someone's singing, their pitch, their timbre, and their tone, and also their amplitude will vary throughout the mix. So you want to just try and catch those inconsistent spikes that is not intended. So it won't be huge or harsh compression, but you will have quite a long attack on it, maybe between 50 and 100, I would say, because obviously there's a lot of words being spoken and everything, and you don't want to squash the initial sounds of it. And I would also have around a medium to longer release, just to because you're trying to tame the transients, and you want to keep that consistency, because it's one long kind of sound, not really a drone sound, but it's a long sound. You don't want that. If you have a fast release, it can kind of create flutter, and that will ruin the vocals pretty much. I'll have quite a light compression, nothing too heavy. Maybe we'll try around 3, and then let's see.
Keep you safe in the top shelf of my heart. The world is full of hate, so I loved you from the start. When it's cold outside,
let's see if you can hear, it kind of tames the vocals a little bit more.
if I could keep you safe in the top shelf of my heart.
It stops it from clipping. You don't want digital distortion, because it sounds horrible. And yeah, it just tames the vocals. If I had to put it within the entire mix of this mix down, it will just sit more comfortably. It will kind of sit more centered within the mix, and you'll hear it a lot better. But the trick is to kind of obviously hear it within the entire mix rather than on its own, just to kind of see the difference and hear the difference. But it's usually done, compression is usually done on vocals to make it sit more present in the mix, and also just to capture any of those inconsistent peaks that are unintentional. Now the next example will be on hi-hats, or any kind of sound that just has that too much of a sharp transient. And this, in my opinion, is quite a creative approach, because you can go in and EQ the sharpness of that frequency, but you can also just you can have a sharper attack or faster attack on the sound, just to tame that transient a little bit more. This will also help if you want to, let's say these hi-hats were a little bit more inconsistent with their dynamic range. See over here, this is what we want to try and control, and it'll just help control the inconsistencies while also controlling the sharpness and just squashing it down a little bit. You can hear now. So what's happening there is that initial transient hit of the hi-hat is being squashed a little bit. It's not too bright anymore. The quicker the attack is, the longer the attack, the more brightness there is. And this is just done in order to just tame that transient a little bit more, while keeping everything kind of consistent. Okay, so the fourth example is quite an interesting one, because this is where I believe that you can get a little bit more creative, especially with your snares or your impacts. So you can hear this impact is quite strong in the beginning. Let me bring up the volume a little bit more. It's quite a powerful impact, and what you can do is you can actually control either the tail of this impact or the initial hit of this impact, depending on your attack or release time, your attack and release time. So let's see it with a longer attack time, with some heavy ratio, with some heavy compression, around -16. See how I'm capturing the initial hit of this impact, but then when the tail hits, it's kind of being squashed a little bit. And if I have a sharper attack or faster attack, it's just reducing the power behind it rather. So yeah, you can get quite creative with that. This is usually if you want to, I mean, a longer attack on these kind of things is usually if you want to preserve the transient and then kind of just squash the tail of the sound a little bit more, depending on what you're going for, really. Alright, now the final, I did promise you that I will be talking about mid-side compression, and this is the final example. Now, in mastering, what you want to try and do is if you want to bring out the sides a little bit more, but you don't want to boost with mid-side EQ, because that kind of can bring a bit more harshness in certain frequency areas. So also, if you want to just kind of control the mids a little bit more, it's a great way of doing this. So if we open up the expert tab in FabFilter, and we give, let's do slight compression, so just a small compression, 3:1. In mastering, you don't really want to go heavy on your compression ratio, because remember, you're targeting, when you're compressing, you're targeting pretty much everything within the mix. You're not just targeting a single thing. So it's a very good idea to kind of get your settings just right. So we'll do for this example though, I will do harsh settings, just so you can hear it correctly. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and bring down the mids, so we'll squash the mids so the side information can be more present. It will help if I turn it to mid side. So if you can hear, there's a lot more side information, and I've kind of taken away the mid information to quite extremely. So this is it bypass. This is it on. Now obviously that doesn't sound good, but it's just a brief example of what mid-side compression can do. It's a great way. I mean, I wouldn't use it all the time. There's very, I would say, rare cases, especially in the mixes that I've received, where I've had to do this. There was one recently where the mids were just a bit too forward, so you want to try and tame the mids a little bit more, just to bring out the width, make the width stand out a little bit more. And it all depends on the mix down, the type of music, so for like jazz or pop music, stuff that's not really going to be played on a PA system or a club system. It's just a great way of preserving the width while controlling the mid information. It's a great technique. So I hope that has helped with a little bit of insight into mid-side compression, and I hope that all these examples have also helped in just getting a better understanding in downwards compression. Now, use downwards compression sparingly. Don't smack it on everything and anything. Be wise in your decision to use any kind of processing in your mix downs. Have a clear understanding of the overall aim or the overall objective that you're trying to achieve with the processing that you're about to do, and yeah, just have fun with it. Remember, the golden rule is that there are no rules, and if it sounds good, then it sounds good. So anyway, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please leave a like, leave a comment down below. And if you want to see more of these videos, this will be the first of the compression series that I did talk about. And yeah, just stay tuned for the next one. And if you enjoyed these videos, then smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.